guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. Hopefully you guys are all doing well, socially isolating and staying safe from the virus, and also spending extra time with your families. So in this video we'll be learning about eclipses, and our learning intention is to be able to explain how eclipses happen. So by the end of this lesson you guys should all know what an eclipse is, be able to explain the difference between a solar and a lunar eclipse, and also finally be able to explain the difference between umbra and penumbra. So let's start off the lesson by writing these down, and once you've done that, let's just write our own definition of what we think an eclipse is. Alright, now that you guys all have your own definition of eclipse down, let's compare it with the formal definition. So the actual definition of eclipse is that eclipses are caused by a celestial body completely or partially blocking sunlight from reaching another celestial body. So a celestial body means just anything outside of the Earth that is naturally occurring. So give yourself a tick if you got anything near this definition. Alright, so our first type of eclipse is the solar eclipse. So we have an image on our left depicting this. And a solar eclipse happens when the moon passes between the sun and the earth, casting a shadow over the earth. So in this case, the celestial bodies here is earth, the moon, and the sun. And the moon is blocking the sunlight from reaching a portion of the earth. And the moon is too small to block light from the sun over the entire earth, so its shadow falls only on part of the earth's surface. Alright, now let's take a closer look at the solar eclipse. So this is the shadow the moon casts over the earth during a solar eclipse. So notice how there's a darker shadow in the middle and a lighter shadow on the outside. The darker one on the inside is known as umbra, and the lighter one towards the outside is known as penumbra. And these kind of shadows aren't limited to eclipses, they're also very visible in our daily life. So when you look at the shadow of yourself, often or sometimes you'll notice that there's two shadows, one dark one and one lighter one. That's also an example of umbra and penumbra. So umbra is the darker one and penumbra is the lighter one. Alright, and since you guys like the formal definition so much, I've got the definitions of umbra and penumbra for you, and also give you an idea of where these words come from. So umbra means shadow in Latin, and this is the darkest part of the shadow where the light is completely blocked. So once again, the darker part of the shadow. Penumbra means almost shadow in Latin, and this is the part of the shadow where the light is partially blocked. So once again, the lighter outside part of the shadow. Alright, so let's move on to our second type of eclipse, and this is known as the lunar eclipse. So the solar eclipse was when the sun got darker, and the lunar eclipse is just when the moon gets darker. So a lunar eclipse happens when the earth passes between the sun and the moon, as you can see once again in this picture or gif here, and this casts a shadow over the moon, so the moon will get darker in this case. So what happens in a lunar eclipse? As the moon passes along its orbit, as you can see just going around here, it first passes through the earth's penumbra, the lighter portion of the shadow here. This causes a partial lunar eclipse, so we can see the process in this picture here. It then moves through the umbra, forming a total lunar eclipse. As you can see here, it gets completely covered. The moon then moves back into the Earth's penumbra and then back into the sunlight, so then it will return to a normal moon. Alright, so here's just a quick summary of the two eclipses. So the name of the eclipse tells you which object is getting darker. So in a solar eclipse, the sun gets darker, the moon is between the sun. And in a lunar eclipse, the moon gets darker and the earth is between the moon and the sun. So these are the key points that you will need to learn for this lesson. And also make sure you really know what umbra and penumbra is. Alright, so here's just a couple of images of the solar eclipse. On the left here we have a partial eclipse, so it's when the moon is partially covering the sun. And on the right we have a full or complete or total eclipse where all of the moon is covering the sun. And over here we have a couple of images of the lunar eclipse. So these on the left is the different stages of the lunar eclipse, as you can see, passing through the penumbra and then completely into the umbra. And on the right is when it is completely into the eclipse. Alright, so at this stage you might be wondering why a lunar eclipse is red and not black like in the solar eclipse, as we can see in this image here. And this has got to do with how light is refracted or bent. So we have a image here showing how white light is bent. So as it passes through a prism, it gets split into these broad range of colors on the right here. So let's have a think about which light bends the least. And we can see up here once again that red bends less than any of the other colors. So when the sunlight goes through the Earth's atmosphere, it's also like a prism, the light is bent in this case as well. So, and because all the other colors below red bend much more, it gets bent right onto the surface of the Earth, so that light will go onto the Earth. Red, on the other hand, bends much less, so it goes through the atmosphere and onto the moon, which is why the moon appears red. Alright, so on this slide here, I've got a quick video about the solar eclipse in real life and the solar eclipse casting a shadow onto the Earth. It's pretty interesting, so make sure you watch it. I'll put the link in the description below. So otherwise, that brings us to the end of this video. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you back in the next lesson.
Boom! 2 + 2 is 4, -1, that's 3, quick maths.